Welcome to the Lighthouse Experiment, a Freedom Center Church podcast. Cool. Okay, well, welcome back to the Lighthouse Experiment Podcast. Thank you all for being back for another week. We are so excited to have a new guest on with us this week from MMR. We have the VP of Operations, Assistant VP of MMR. We have Eric Snidersich on with us this week. I did it. Thank you.
Nailed it.
And as well, myself, co-host Ashley Chandler, and Chaplain Jim Parkin.
Well, welcome, man. I appreciate it. I sincerely appreciate, for one, I've been at MMR for, I would say at this point, 115 days, right? Or something like that. But it's been remarkable, the support and all this side hustle that I have going on.
Yeah.
It's just been, because I was doing this for the last, 3 or 4 years at my last company. And there was, we were kind of seeing the end of days there anyway, but it was nothing. Not even what is this thing you do? And I was doing the same, bringing in snacks and all the same things, but it's been super cool and kind of reignited what we're doing here just from the support from you guys.
Yeah,
that's cool.
Absolutely. Mm-hmm.
That's good. Nice to hear that.
Yeah, it's been my time there has been remarkable. My wife was just chirping me a little bit because it hasn't been long. And after today, I'll be having my third appearance in the newsletter. We had a lady come in because we did the burritos at 4th of July. We did the snacks and all this other stuff. And Lori had asked me a bunch of questions about Lighthouse Experiment and all that stuff. But then we had a patient come in who she had probably the most catastrophic seizure that I've ever seen. We picked her up. She had had a headache in the morning. Her doc sent her to regional imaging. They found a bleed. Enter 886, and we pick her up. And as soon as we got her in the back of the rig, she had the most massive catastrophic seizure. Had that up and right gaze, was posturing. And then 3 days later, she left Hurley's ICU with literally zero. We met her this morning, 0 deficits.
Wow.
But she was like, I want to meet the crew. So we had a little meet and greet, and they took pictures, sent them up to Lori, and I'm sure it'll show up somewhere.
Yeah, those ones, I always tell people, it's I've been a paramedic it'll be 30 years in December, and I was an EMT 2 years before that. So I've always said, anytime I wanted to quit, or I was fed up, I had enough, I've seen enough, I get one of those patients like you talked about, where something good happens that you were involved in, and then kind of reignites your flame. And I always said that, sometimes, I don't know if it's divine intervention or what, but it's like somebody knew I was about to quit.
Right, man.
and you get that simple hug, or you get that thank you, or whatever, or you feel like you're a positive influence on something.
Yeah.
And it kind of reignites the flame. But the timing always seems to be impeccable. It's like when I need it the most, that's when it happens. And I can't explain it, but it just seems to be, it happens over and over again. And, I'll be the first to admit, it seems like monthly or whatever that, I just don't want to do this anymore,
Oh, yeah.
I'm tired of getting yelled at. I'm tired of people being mean or whatever. And then you get that family member that just appreciates you being there. Not that you have to do, you don't even have to do something spectacular sometimes. It's just a matter of caring.
Right.
And people appreciate that you recognize that they were in their most vulnerable moment, and you took the time to listen to it. And,
Right.
And that power, I've always felt, is probably one of the best things about this job, is that you're walking in to a home where somebody didn't know what to do.
Yeah.
And you're the one that is supposed to know what to do. And, depending on how you hold yourself and how you act and your empathy level, you can make a huge change in somebody's life without an IV, with cardiac monitor, without a bunch of drugs, without all the stuff you see on TV. You can make a huge impact with just who you are.
That's absolutely true.
And honestly, most of the times I get a thank you, I didn't do a whole lot.
Right.
I didn't do the cool stuff you see on TV. I didn't put a tube down somebody's throat upside down in a car. It was simple stuff,
Right.
And
a few years back, Ron Green, he's one of the instructors. He's a paramedic instructor in the Genesee program.
Yeah, I think I know.
He calls me up. He says, "Hey, your podcast is up and rolling, and you're doing all your stuff. Would you mind coming in and talking to my class? I have a new class going, and they're right at that point. We're about to finish, and they're getting excited to get out there on the road." I was like, "Sure." And I went in there, and kind of to piggyback off what you were just saying, I said, I told them who I was. I said, "Listen, you're going to use your ALS paramedic skills about 18% of the time."
Mm-hmm.
So the majority of this job is hand holding and conversations.
It is.
And you should have seen, it was funny because the wind went out of their sails. But today I ran into one of those kids that was in that class, and he said, you were 1,000% accurate.
Wow.
Yeah.
And it has been that is what it's been. And,
Yeah, I have this mantra. I've always, I stick to it because I believe it. And I think being a good EMS provider is 10% knowledge, 10% skills, and 80% leadership.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's true. And when I say leadership, I mean empathy, I mean compassion, it's all those, I don't want to say intangibles, but it really is, because generally you're going into chaos and you're trying to make calm.
Mm-hmm.
And, frankly, I started an IV on a patient. It doesn't really do a whole lot. It's just there as a safeguard. Or I do something, simple that, really is mundane to me. But I'll tell you, I think if I do that same thing and I have the wrong attitude, or I'm like, oh, here's another patient, it's another diabetic that didn't take care of themselves. And if you go in with that attitude, that's when you get in trouble.
Mm-hmm.
And to me, it's about being compassionate. It's about being genuine. And if you can be genuine and you can portray that to your patient, it makes your life so much easier.
Right.
Well, I'm sure from even just a physiological, getting them to be able to calm down enough so that they can actually communicate better information.
Right.
Not escalating them where they're more crazy, depending on what all the factors are and stuff. I think that was hands down one of the top things that I did not expect to experience when I came on my first ride along with Jim, was just his calm demeanor.
Yeah.
Because again, I fly desk, so my idea of running to a scene with lights going is we're all stressed and we're running inside this house and everything's and it's Jim gets out of the rig and he's walking in. I mean, based on the information that he's got, but he's not up here. He's down here, and then just the way that he's talking to people. I remember the one guy that burned. Remember he burned his hand. It was a homeless guy.
Mm-hmm.
And just the way you talk to him like he was an old friend. A family member's kid. You talk to him and it was just, it blew me away. The whole cadence of how
that's the dude that he was super worried that this guy, he thought that if we lost he had his driver's license that he had obviously
like,
used to break into houses or something, but it was all bent up and tore up. And he's like, if you lose that, then I no longer exist. I don't have an identity. And I was like, man, that's not true. You know, we got up to Hurley and whatever, and I don't know from there, but yeah, I remember that dude.
Yeah. Yeah, it's I think communication with people and leadership on a scene just goes so far. You know, there's studies out there that say, well, in EMS, 5% of your calls are truly life-threatening, where, you know, seconds count and all that. And like I said, you know, it's not TV. A lot of people come in there, they think it's me like the television program. You know, everybody's got some amputation going on or
some drama that only lasts 23 minutes plus commercials. It's all wrapped up by the end. You know?
Yeah. It's not that. You know, it's a lot of, you know, it's a lot of taking care of people that have no other outlet for getting care.
Right.
You know? And your EMS is kind of the mop up of everything that's wrong in healthcare.
Well, yeah. I say that often. I say that what I call us as EMS providers is grief mops. That is that is
a good way to say it. It really is. Because a lot of times it's either somebody has no other outlet or they haven't been able to get through the system appropriately to get what they need in a chronic situation. Those chronic situations become exacerbated to the point that now they're in danger, you know.
Right.
Yeah.
You know, down here, like in Flint, what we see a lot of the time is, you know, people use Hurley and McLaren as their primary care, and you know, I'll have young providers and they get so mad. I'm like, well, let's think of it. Let's spell it out here. They know they could go to one of the Hamilton clinics. They're going to wait just as long to maybe see a PA, but probably not. They're just going to see a medical assistant. Or they can go to Hurley, set for the same amount of time, and they're going to see a physician at some point. It's undereducated as to how the system works, but these aren't stupid people, and they know the difference. Yeah. So they're, you know, they're going to sit there for, in the bad seasons, you know, 48 hours sometimes. They'll be there all night long waiting and waiting and waiting and waiting.
Yeah.
Which is sad, though, because that's still the path of least resistance for a lot of them.
Right.
Well, you know, there's other circumstances, too. Like, with our first, Nick and I were 21 and 23, and we went home after kind of a turbulent labor and delivery. I didn't feel the greatest. And 4 weeks later, had to go in for a D&C after I passed out at home, after I was bleeding way more than I should have. And my poor husband was so freaked out. And at that point, he was trying to take me to the hospital. I had passed out in the back seat, and I woke up to paramedics going, hey, so what's going on? You know? And that's exactly how that paramedic responded to me. He just was like, hey, how you doing? What's going on? You know, like, and by the time they had me in the rig and on the way to the Jackson Hospital, I'm like, oh, I'm good. I'm in good hands now. We're just having like a hangout now. We're on our way out to the hospital. It'll be good. But Nick, I know for a long time was very, very scared. Like, he thought he was losing me. He didn't know what was going on, what to do. He's on the side of the highway. He had lost his phone. He didn't know what was going on. Like, he was in such chaos. And I literally was unresponsive the entire time until the paramedics got there.
Yeah.
And so just moments like that where, like what you were explaining before, people just have no idea what to do and they need help. They just, they need help. And I can remember, as much as all the crazy was going on, the whole demeanor of that first responder was like, hey, so what's going on? Like, he literally, what's going on? I'm like, I don't know. You know, I had a baby 4 weeks ago. I don't know. So just, it's wild. And then I our family lost my brother about 6 years ago in a car accident. And the rig that responded was literally just right up the road and turned around and responded. And so that was a situation where, like, none of us could have or would have been there for him in that moment. And because somebody else decided that that was going to be their job, that was going to be their career, that they were showing up that day to help my brother, help my family member, you know. So
yeah, that's one of those things I find rewarding about the job, is that you are there. Sometimes you are the only one there to help people in, I hate to say the last moments, but when they are most vulnerable, or where they have no other idea of what to do.
Yeah.
And you're entrusted to care for them when they are most vulnerable, or when they feel like they are going to die. That's powerful, and it's a big responsibility. And I think sometimes, a lot of us in EMS kind of forget that, and I had my dad had gotten sick about 4 or 5 years ago, really bad. We didn't think he was going to make it. And so I'm on the other end of the patient care spectrum, where, I'm relying on other people to do the right thing, and, having some knowledge and all that, but I'm the helpless one. And I realized during his illness how important it is for the people that are taking care of my family member to be concerned, compassionate, to be genuine, to keep me informed. He's in an ICU situation where, admittedly, I haven't worked in a lot of critical care in a while. And so I realize how important it is for us to maintain that empathy, to maintain that communication, to let people know what's going on. Because as much as the patient is our patient, the families are patient. The loved ones are our patient. And we have to take those people into consideration, because that has a lot to do with the impact that we make with people.
Yeah.
It's pretty amazing that you bring that up, because so when my son was 3 months, he, and I'd been in Genesee County at Swartz for a long, long time, so had a reputation in the county. And so he gets sick, he's got pneumonia, and it was one of those things where, too, like, enough to be dangerous. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So he was getting worse, but I'm like, he'll be fine. We'll just take him, I got to work in the morning, just take him to the pediatrician. Well, by the time all this transpires, pneumonia is in his left lung is just huge for a 3-month-old, and he's like head bobbing and all this stuff. So my wife calls me. I'm at the pediatrician. They're calling for EMS, and they didn't know, the doc, she would have just called Swartz, but the medical assistant just dialed 911. So another company, Stat, was responding. So I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm going to go over there. So I go there. I went back to our headquarters, went POV. Their crew shows up. One of the deputies shows up. And there I am standing there still in uniform. And they're like, the medic from Stat was like, do you want me just to cancel? Do you want this patient? I was like, no, this is my kid, and I want you to do what I know that you know how to do. Yeah. But I will tell you, man, they load him up. My wife gets in the front of the ambulance, and when they shut the back doors, like you said, I have never in my life, and that's like 9 years in, I've never felt so helpless. And from that day on, I didn't, there was no solemn vow or anything, but every time I've ever dealt with a patient, I've explained what I'm doing to their family the whole time.
Yeah. I think that is probably one of the most important things, and it's probably one of the things that we're not very good at as a whole. As just as an industry, I don't think it's it's not an MMR thing. It's not a sports thing. It's not a stat thing. I think
No.
as a whole, we kind of forget that, because I don't want to say we get numb, but you do it day in and day out, and you kind of think, well, you kind of forget that the people around you don't know what you're doing or why.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's kind of automatic for us, but we kind of forget it's not automatic for everybody else.
Right.
So
absolutely.
Yeah, I had a little bit of a change when my dad was, pretty sick, and I saw that, and what's funny is I think about it, and I talk to like our EMT classes and our paramedic classes when they graduate. That's one of the things I do is try to impart some wisdom, what little I have, onto them, and I tell them that you don't understand the impact that you have on somebody during that period of time. And I've related to some of the classes. I've had experiences where I am standing in a grocery store line, and these people come up and they say, "You're the one that took care of me," or "You're the one that was there during."
Wow.
And I don't remember them.
Right.
They're a 1,000 calls away, but and I don't look. I guess I don't look normal. I'm a little tall, a little chunky, but maybe people recognize me, but to have somebody who I took care of maybe a year or two ago to come up and say, "Hey, thanks for going. You're the one that took care of me," or whatever. It makes you realize the impact that you can have on people.
Yeah. What's funny is I always worry if the first thing I think about when I'll have that, it's like, was I nice?
Yeah.
What
I do wrong?
Like, you're alive, so we know that's good. But was I polite? Was I friendly?
Yeah. Well, I'm always afraid. I've had that before, where like a wife has come up. "You took care of my husband," and I'm like thinking to myself, do I ask how they're doing, or is that?
Yeah.
Oh
yeah.
Yes.
I don't want to say, "Oh, he's dead." No, I don't want to do that.
Yeah, probably not.
Those are the things, though. I feel like that's where we're responsible as veterans in the industry to impart that stuff. We'll run calls and we'll have conversations on what would you have done here and what we have done on this cardiac rhythm or whatever the case. But that intangible stuff, like you said, that like when I talk to our young EMTs coming up now and just explain to them, like, just by our skill set and our demeanor and who we are for stepping into this industry, we actually improve someone's situation just by showing up.
Yeah.
But then, like, what do you do? What do we do with that past just showing up? And it's more than just skill set. You know what I mean?
It is. Yeah, I'm a firm believer on that. It's like I said, it's about leadership. It's about creating calm in chaos. It's about empathy, most of all. Understanding what made this. I tell people, for the most part, I don't know about you guys, but for me to pick up the phone and call 911, it's going to be desperate. For me, I don't have any other outlet.
Right.
And so I think the majority of our patients, obviously there's some that just pick up the phone because they just want to go to the hospital or whatever, and that's a ride. But for the most part, people are vulnerable and they don't know what else to do, and they're looking for somebody to guide them.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And we have a great responsibility in making sure that we are sound in our advice. We take everybody seriously. Obviously, not every patient's going to die or have a huge problem. They probably would have been fine if they drove in, but they didn't think so at one time.
Right.
Yeah.
And we have to understand that.
Right.
So, and I get it, especially after COVID, it seems like boy, we're taking care of a lot of chronic problems that you kind of stand back, you say to yourself, boy, I wish they'd see their doctor or whatever.
Right.
But a lot of people I know, in the area I work, a lot of people, they do call their doctor, and their doctor's like, don't come here.
Right. Well, yeah, that's part of the thing too, right?
Yeah. So we're having to mop up a lot of the problems within the healthcare system, and it's tiring on people, and it's weighing on people, and we're busier than ever, shorter than ever.
Right.
All that.
Yeah, COVID, man, that really took a toll. And I think that's one of the things when we kind of get into the mental health piece, like I've talked about on the show before, like this is a thing that I don't think we've really seen the effects fully.
No.
It was like the longest, like for me as a military guy, COVID was like the longest deployment of my entire adult life. It seemed like every day was Monday. All the extra things, all the temperature taking, getting frustrated with how just 7 of us walk in and everybody is 97.1. There's no way. Like, you know what I mean? But all the extra things. And then, my partner, now we were partners at Swartz early March to June of 2020 COVID. His mom got COVID and passed away. And so all the things are going on. And I think, like I said, I don't think we've seen all of, on the mental health side, what that is. I think we're just starting to scratch the surface of what that's gonna.
I think we are, and I don't know if I mentioned this earlier, but I think a lot of that stuff existed, but COVID's kind of been the thing that brought it to the surface more.
Like the catalyst.
Yeah. It's kind of, it's exposed the raw nerve that already was there. And I think it's pushed a lot of people over the edge, and like we've seen, not only in EMS but just everywhere, the Great Resignation, and people just switching over on jobs and what they do for careers. The hospitals are short, we're short, everybody's short, but yet we're expected to do as much, if not more, than we've ever done.
Right.
And that weighs on people heavily. And so I think that's why we're seeing a lot of things surface now that maybe were tolerable before, but now they're not.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And kind of the nuance to that, which isn't helpful at all, but as an older dude, I've been at this a long time, and I'm a veteran and stuff like that. So I have in the back of my mind is that these people calling, they don't care about our mental health issues or our staffing or what we went through with COVID. They're having a situation right now, and they need us right now and at our best.
Yep.
Yeah,
the expectation hasn't changed. In fact, I think sometimes the expectations become greater on us. But we're doing that with a lot less people. And we're doing that with a lot less time to ourselves. We don't rest like we should. We're working people harder and harder and harder. I know it. I primarily work in Saginaw. I've worked other areas as well, but I worked in Flint actually back in like '94. But I remember when I came to Saginaw in 1998, if we had a 12-hour shift and we did 4 or 5 calls, we were busy. And now it's 10 to 11, sometimes. It's a lot for people to do. And if you think about it, when I started in paramedic class and that, it wasn't nearly as technical as it is now. There's so much more to know. We have to do so much more with compliance, and we have to follow all these rules. We have our computerized or our electronic PCRs that are a challenge. There's just so many things being piled on people, and there's a lot of pinch points for everybody, and that weighs on them. It's difficult.
What do you think is
to top it off, EMS doesn't pay that great.
Yeah. What do you think is going to be
I will say this, man. Sorry, Ashley. I've never been paid more. So, so you guys say that, and I'm like, oh, I'm going to tell you. This is, I never imagined, I never imagined I'd be where I'm at now. So for me personally, I'm only speaking for Jim here, but I'm loving life right now and doing the thing. But
yeah, we still have a lot of work to do on that. The unfortunate thing is that, I get this from employees all the time. It's like, hey, Traverse City is a good example. I was up at Traverse City, and I was working at Cherry Fest, and I drive by the Culver's, and the Culver's is advertising $22 an hour, and we start medics at 20, and it's hard to compete with all these other things. Now, obviously, if you go to work for Culver's, it's not going to be full time. You're not going to get benefits, all that stuff. Yeah, I get it. But when I see things like that, it just frustrates me, because it's like, here I've got all these paramedics and EMTs with much higher responsibility, a lot more training, and here we are, we have to pay them what we pay them, and it's a product of that. That's all we can get. That's why now that I go and order that value meal, it costs $12 when it cost $8 2 years ago.
Yeah.
Right.
They can just raise their price. We can't. We get what we get.
Mm-hmm.
And so we've had to be real inventive about, trimming the things that we can trim without affecting the patient care, so that we can try to pay everybody as much as possible. But it's real competitive out there, and especially when you look at such a shortage out there in the workforce, in EMS specifically, you can't really, you can't stand still on the wages. You have to keep reevaluating.
Right.
But eventually, it's a matter of, the well's not bottomless.
Right.
We can't raise the price of the ambulance trip, because it's not going to do anything.
That doesn't. Yeah, it doesn't. It's like, I always think of it. I don't know anything about billing other than it's just you cast as big a net as you can. The only thing I know about billing is that reimbursement is not good. No matter, it's hard for to squeeze really the money that the trip was worth out of the insurance provider.
Yeah, in EMS, Jim, is, I don't want to get too far into the business stuff, because I think we want to talk more about mental health, but EMS is, probably 50% reimbursement of what you bill overall. And, for us, we're a nonprofit organization. We're more worried about sustainability. We don't worry about profit, but, when you at the end of the day, for us to have 2% left over at the end of the year is a good year.
Mm-hmm.
And so when we have little things happen, or if we have a major accident, or we have to pay out, for some sort of increase or something like that, that 2% gets really sketchy.
Well, yeah.
I always say EMS is always 90 days away from bankruptcy.
Yeah. Well, what's cool for me, and everybody that I talk across the board of my coworkers, what's cool is that you guys keep us. So I spent almost 2 decades in an agency that we never knew really what was going on, but when all of a sudden we're near $5 a gallon,
mm-hmm.
We get the newsletter and Mark's telling us, listen, I didn't anticipate this, and this isn't what we budgeted for, so these are the steps we need to take. So now we're all in the know, and we can get on board with working. I think for all of it, for feeling as though you're part of the team and the mission, which for me is good for my mental health. If I understand okay, this is the mission. I'm very much wired that kind of that operator brain. Tell me what the op is. Okay. And this is what we need to do. And we can make those adjustments, and we can make sure we're doing our part to kind of ease that pressure. That
Right.
for me and a lot of us in Genesee, that's an important piece to keep us, to keep that kind of on the level, is just understanding what we need to do to be part of the plan.
Yeah. Well, and what you're saying is exactly intentional on our part. And I think Lori and I and Mark and Michelle, we talk about that a lot. It's like, we need to let these people know where we're at, because I think if people understand some of the pressures, they'll they'll make the right decisions.
Right.
Because I think we all share a part in making things successful. And to kind of just clam up and not share the actual financials, I don't think that's right. I want to be like I said, we're nonprofit. If somebody really wants to go look, they can go into the IRS and see how we do.
Right.
Yeah.
It's about putting it into the hands of the employee. And I tell people this all the time. I want you to make $1 more an hour, but here's what I need you to do. If we have something that we can bill for, we should bill for it. And I need you to do your patient care record. I need you to write it clinically sound so that billing department can bill it out appropriately.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
You can't make stuff up, but if there's something that we should be reimbursed for, get the signature from the patient so we can bill the insurance, so we don't saddle the patient with the bill.
Right.
Yeah.
Just little things like that make a huge difference. And I've talked about this with a lot of the employees. It's like, I just need a little bit of a leap of faith from you that if you're going to do everything that you're supposed to do, then I'm going to do everything I can to get everything that I can for you.
That's cool.
Right.
That has to be our attitude, and we have to be focused on the employees, because they're the ones that do the mission every day. They're the ones that are facing the patients. They're the ones that are getting the stress. We have to do everything we can to be responsible to our employees. And I say this all the time, and when people don't understand some of the things some of the decisions that we make, and I say, every time I have to make a decision, whether it's a financial or a policy or whatever, I look at it as I have 600 families that I'm responsible for. And they have to put gas in their car. They have to feed their children. They want to go on vacations. They have to meet their minimum needs. And if we're not doing the right thing for 600 people, then we need to rethink what we're doing.
Right.
And it's hard, because sometimes those decisions affect individuals, but I have to look at it as a whole.
Right.
And so that's hard.
Oh yeah.
It really is. But I'm happy to do it. It's been a lot of work over the past year. So.
Yeah.
Imagine. But this is big. It's huge for you to come on here. Because people, our coworkers, listen. It's
Cool.
It's important. It's important that they see that you guys actually are, doing your due diligence to take care of us. The commonplace in American, for American employment, that it's like us versus you guys. You guys are the management. We're just the road crews, and I try to explain for a lot of these guys they've only ever been at MMR, so listen, you really don't, you have never felt the breakdown of an agency and had it start at one place and then gradually get to a place where it's no longer healthy to be there. Yeah. And so just understand what these guys what they're attempting to do. That's, to me, that's huge what you just said. You're worrying about 600 families. I'm worrying about 2, mine and my partners. You know what?
Yeah.
if you break it down like that, like I'm concerned with me and him and our families, and we do everything together to include church. But like, that's a big deal. That's a big deal for people to consider, like what you guys have on your plate actually.
Yeah, I kind of scare myself every time I say that because I'm like, man, this is,
Yeah.
So.
Yeah,
But
it's a huge
yeah,
responsibility to have that much authority, like impact over.
Yeah, I wouldn't call it authority. I would say,
More impact.
Influence. I don't know. I don't know what the right word is. It's just, I just want to help. At the end of the day, I want people to be safe. I want them to feel value in what they do, and I want to pay them as well as I can to do that. Because I think everybody, with as hard as everybody's working right now, I think the employees deserve to have time off. I think they deserve to be able to go on vacation. I think they deserve not to worry about filling their gas tank up, for crying out loud. When gas hit $5 a gallon, I'm sitting there thinking to myself, if I'm an EMT at $16 an hour, how do I do that? Just to get to work. And then if they have childcare, whatever, boy, it just eats it all up. And, we've done a lot with wages over the past year. One of the things I had read, I have a spreadsheet in my office, like EMTs are up like 35% over the past 13 months, and then paramedics are up 30% on wage over the past 13 months.
Okay.
But you look at the economy right now, you're like, well, most of that got wiped out.
Yeah.
You just like, you get a little deflated over the whole thing. But,
yeah.
No,
I mean, I know there's been years where Nick's come home and he's like, "Ooh, I got like 24 cents."
Yeah.
But inflation went up like 80 some, so we're upside down compared to how much inflation went up, that's it. I mean, and we've just seen it drastically right now.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, like just our insurance benefits, our health insurance benefits, Blue Cross is telling us 15% increase for next year. And we're like, how do we do that? How do we do it? It's one thing after another.
Yeah.
Not a good time. That puts a lot of stress on people.
Right.
Yeah. But I think from the employee side, I think that's pretty right on to be, employees are usually probably, hey, I want to enjoy my job. I want to feel respected and cared about by those around me at my employment, and I want to get paid as much as I can doing it. So, I mean, it sounds like you guys are right on target with striving for all the things that you can. So,
well, we're trying. One of the things, we're trying really hard. Jim kind of touched on it earlier about that management versus the staff type mentality, and I'd like to get rid of that.
Yeah.
I'm a human being.
Right.
I'm just, I'm not the assistant vice president. I'm a human being. I'm a dad. I'm a husband. I have family. I'm not against you.
Right. It's such an interesting thing.
And I'd like to break down some of that barrier, and I'd like to be able to. And like I said earlier, I think it's about trust, and all I can do is show you that I'm going to do what I can, and if you walk away with a little bit of trust, then I've done well.
Right.
And I'm going to trust it when you're out there in the field on your own, that I'm going to have to trust that you're taking care of the patient well, and you're not destroying the equipment, or you're not abusing things, and you're representing us well. When I came back to MMR, that was one of the things, when I interviewed, they said, well, Eric, what's your goal? And I said, here's my goal. When I call an ambulance for my dad, which we've done about 4 times now, I said, I don't want to have to pick up the phone and figure out who's on what truck.
Mm-hmm.
That I want it to be, if it's MMR, anybody's good, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And that's what I want to work towards. And I want to work back towards that respect. I want to work towards that consistency and having a standard and a culture where we're all on the same page. And we're not going to do that if it's management versus the staff, you know?
Right.
We've all got to be on the same mission. We got to understand that we all have an impact on patient care, whether it's the dispatcher, whether it's the maintenance, it's the paramedics, DMTs, it's the billers, it's everybody, you know.
Right.
Everybody has a contribution to getting this done, and one's not greater than the other.
Right.
Right.
And that's what's cool for me is that's the culture I feel coming into this organization, where
you're just like, you're making me super happy hearing this.
Well, I mean, sincerely, like I had been when I got into EMS, it was with Swartz and it was wonderful, and it was the place to be in Genesee County. Like you had to know. I knew two guys that I was on the fire department with, and I needed both of them, and it was hard to get in, and there's this level, but it kind of waned. It just did, and kind of the reason was it was this is the way it's always been done, and we stayed with that path, and that path didn't work out, and then it just got to it was killing my desire to be a paramedic, and at the same time I was believing that I could only be a paramedic there, and I don't know what switched the light on, but I was like, I gotta go, and it's got to be MMR. And it's just been, well, also because the management team in Genesee had been recruiting me for a couple of years pretty consistently. But despite all the little nuances and the little struggles we have, just the culture is more of where it's like you can understand what the mission is. Like this lady, this patient coming to talk to us today, that's a win for MMR.
Yeah.
It's not just me and my partner. That is like all of us. That reflects the whole place.
It does. And that's something that I'm glad you brought up, because now think about that patient and that experience that patient had. They're not going to hesitate next time they call.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And that's what I mean about having an impact on people. If we're making a positive impact on people when they're not that sick, they're not going to hesitate to call when they are.
Right.
You know.
That makes sense. Yeah.
And I tell people all the time, and I get frustrated because I hear anecdotally these stories. Well, the paramedic told me I didn't need to go to the hospital. I'm like, oh man, why do you do that? It's just, you're not there to tell people not to go to the hospital. You're there to take care of them. Whatever's wrong, take care of it, and take them to the hospital.
Mm-hmm.
But there's a lot of times I hear these stories, and I think to myself, well, what happens if they do have a heart attack?
Right.
The last interaction they had was, well, you're not really sick. You don't need to go. So then they don't pick up the phone.
Right.
What have we done? That's terrible. We can't do that.
Yeah. Our listeners, you guys need to be hearing this, because this is my move, my go-to move always. We had a lady today, we use this. Well, I don't know if I should really go. I kind of feel better now. And I always tell them you cannot put a price tag on peace of mind.
Yeah.
You called us for a reason.
Yeah.
If you get to the hospital and nothing, and you feel like you want to just go home, but let's get to the hospital. Let's get you in with the docs, and they'll figure it out. But you can't put a price tag on peace of mind.
Yeah.
And like 80% of the time, they're like, okay, let's go.
Yeah, well, exactly. And I always go back to, you thought it was bad enough to pick up 911.
Right.
Yeah.
You may feel a little bit better now, but 10 minutes ago it was bad.
Right.
I don't want to have to come back later and have it worse.
Right.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's kind of the mindset I use. That's the mindset I usually carry with people. Or I try to say, hey, you thought it was bad enough to call 911, so let's figure this out.
So what do you guys think is going to take? What's it going to take to get more people into the industry?
I think celebrating them when they do it.
Yeah.
I always look at things like the old Vidal Sassoon thing, where you told two friends and they told two friends, but like we have a young EMT. She's just getting started, and she was with me on a super bad case a couple weeks ago, and she had the wherewithal to take herself out. She said, "Jim, I need you to step in here. I'm overwhelmed."
Yeah.
So instead of bash that, I celebrated that. I'm like, that was an awesome job. You did a great job. But each time someone brand new comes in, I think as their coworkers, as veterans in the community, just celebrate the fact that they stepped up.
Yeah.
It's instead of it's just a job and everyone's burnt out and we're all, old and grumpy now. I've had the time of my life doing this, and I've been doing it for a long time. I still love it. And so that's what I try to impart, right? I try to this is the best thing that you could have ever done ever. And you're going to love it. And you're going to want to be a paramedic, and you're going to do all the things, and just celebrate them as they come in.
Well, we had Austin on earlier in the summer.
Yeah.
And for probably about 3 months, every time I saw him, he was animated. He was so excited to talk about it. It was
That's really... a kid, Eric. Austin Blythe. He's a kid. He's EMT with us in Genesee.
Yeah.
When I brought him on a ride along when I was at Swartz, and just kind of turned the light on, and then here he is.
But it's been neat to see this spans of I'm excited to get into it, and then I'm excited he about was losing his mind when he heard that you were going to be joining MMR and that he would be able to be in the same company as you. He was so stoked. And then throughout the summer, the last episode that he was on with us, just being able to talk to somebody that understood, but all of these I don't know, not basic, but all these major kind of subjects of what I feel a lot of folks in first response have to be able to process through and deal with. And here's the guy that's been doing it for a while, being able to walk next to the kid that's just getting started, and not him make him feel like he's an idiot, not tell him, oh yeah, whatever. But also, you gave him space to talk through that. Mm-hmm. You encouraged him. You just, you were right there in it with him, and I felt that moment. I felt that really encapsulated so much of the heart of Lighthouse Experiment and why we're doing what we're doing, is just come alongside people and encouraging them and celebrating them and just giving them space to process all this so that they can do this well,
Yeah. Yeah, I think celebrating it, and I'm a firm believer that, I don't know, Jim, if you read, I did something for the newsletter at MMR, I don't know, it was 3-4 months ago, about being a good teacher and imparting your experience on others. And I'm a firm believer that, I'm going to be honest with you. I went through EMT school. I did really well. I had great grades. And I was in Florida as an EMT. And I was working at a volunteer service that was ALS. And I decided, well, I'm going to get out of the Air Force. I got to have something to do. I'm going to be a paramedic, And so I applied to paramedic school. And the minimum, you had to be an EMT for a year. And that was the minimum. And I got in the first time. There were 300 applicants for 30 spots.
Oh, wow.
This is how much EMS has changed. It was that competitive just to get into school. And so I got in the first time, and I frankly didn't have enough experience, on the road, because I was still active duty and kind of doing 24 hours a week. And I was struggling in paramedic class. I could pass all the tests, I could do everything else, but man, I couldn't start an IV. I actually poked myself with a needle. I went to the OR, and the anesthesiologist is like, "You sure you want to do this? You're not very good at it," you know. And I had the one guy, and I put it in this letter that I wrote for the newsletter. His name was Dean White, and he was a paramedic. He'd probably been a paramedic 4 or 5 years at the time. He's still kind of fairly new, and I don't know what he saw in me or whatever, but he took me under his wing, and he got me through school, and he taught me a lot of things, the things that you don't learn in class, the things that help make you successful, and I tell that to people because after 30 years, I still know this guy's name, and I can still recall what he did for me. And he did it because it's the right thing to do. You know, he didn't do it because he got extra money to be a trainer. He didn't do it. He did it because it's the right thing to do, because he felt, and he said this to me one time, because I asked him, I said, "Why, you're doing so much. Why are you doing this?" And he says, "Because what you do in the future reflects upon me as well."
Oh, wow.
And I'm like, that's pretty powerful. And so that's why I'm such a huge proponent for people just showing other new people how to do this job, how to do it right, how to take care of people right. Because, when we're all gone someday, when I'm not in EMS anymore, all that's going to be left is my legacy.
Right.
You know? And I want to be remembered as the person who took care of people well, who was empathetic, who wanted the industry to go further, who wanted people that were out there that were compassionate and full of knowledge, and continued that down the road. I feel it's my responsibility, because of Dean White, that I have to impart that on somebody else.
Right. Me too, man.
By celebrating them, that's part of that celebration. I'm celebrating what was given to me, and now it's my to pass that along.
Yeah.
That's the coolest.
Yeah.
Like my approach is probably much different. We've talked about this on the show. Like, I talk an awful lot of smack about being better than everybody, but like what happened at Swartz, and what I see happening here is my fellow paramedics will be like, "Oh yeah, old man, I bet I'm better than you are." I'm like, "Well, show me." But then they do. Then they actually they go the extra and they do the thing. And then I'll tell my partner, "You see what I just did?" And he's like, "Yeah." But that's been cool. Like, honestly, I have had the opportunity to mentor people during their paramedic internship, and like one of them, he's a sheriff's deputy, he's in the paramedic division. One of them, she works in Genesee with me now, and like, what a rewarding thing to see how good they're doing.
Yeah.
And to know that I had just a little piece of the story, and to see how they're flourishing now. That is.
Yeah.
And you know what? And they don't forget it.
No.
They'll forget it. And when you're long and gone, when you're gone out of this profession and moved on or whatever, they're going to bring up your name. If you did it right. I mean, what a better feeling.
Right.
To have somebody bring you up as, "Hey, I had this guy, he showed me all this stuff, he took time with me," or whatever. That's rewarding to me. That's better, frankly. Well, I need a paycheck, but
right. But those are the things, man. Those are really the things. And I think that in some ways, that those little pieces, and those of us who are veterans in the industry and stuff like that, bringing people up that way and supporting them in that way, in some ways, that takes care of the mental health piece. The encouragement, the feeling. Like, I'm a big believer in that people don't they don't burn out per se. They just forget why they started the thing in the beginning, because that'll really, that for me, that'll recalibrate me when I'm like, man, I hate this. I'm done. This is my last day. I'm never doing this again. I just had a run in with a McLaren nurse or something, and I'm done. And then I'll do the report and I'll think back to the lady who came in and met us today, or a case 10 years ago, then I remember why I started to begin with.
Yeah.
Or like Austin will come up. Maybe he's at the hospital and he's super excited about, something that I've done a million times before, but it's his first time. And then, that reminds me why I started this, 18 years ago. And then then I remember, and it's super beneficial for me, those little times. So, for us to support people coming up, I think is.
Yeah. And I think you hit on a good point though. It's like, what intrinsically keeps you coming back? You have to kind of remind yourself why you want to come back, and what in my day intrinsically makes me want to do this again. When you run 12 calls in 12 hours, a lot of it was hard. It was, I got out late, I'm tired, I'm exhausted. What did I do to change something? And sometimes you have to just kind of look at that, or like you're saying about Austin, or what impact did I make on somebody? That's what keeps me going.
Right.
Just like I brought it up earlier, it seems like, I don't know if it's divine or not, but it seems like every time I'm ready to quit, something good happens. I get a hug.
True.
I in a family, I don't know about you, but like, if a family member says thank you, man, that just makes my day.
Right.
That's all I need. I could have trudged through a bunch of mud or lifted them out of the house and killed my back or whatever, and the family says thank you so much for being here.
Right.
That just, man, that makes me.
That's the thing, right? When people say thank you, you guys were great, you guys were excellent.
Well,
today.
I got like a little story. I had this happen. I don't know, maybe it's been about 3-4 months ago, and I had this patient who was, I don't know exactly what was going on with it. I think it was probably like hyperkalemic or something. But the family had called and they're all upset. He's basically getting non-responsive, and I had put him on the monitor. I'm like, man, his heart rate's 30. And we're in this tight bedroom. I was like, we just got to lift him out of here and get out of here, and so we can work on him, And we got him to the back of the truck, and the family, he was talking, and the family was thinking, yeah, everything's going to be okay. And the guy arrested right when we got in the truck, and we ended up working for about an hour. And during that whole time, I was kind of going back and forth between the patient and the family outside, and I was telling them what was going on. I said, I'm really sorry. There was obviously something bad going on. We're better off doing it here rather than trying to go down the road and doing CPR. And I was really, it was one of those deals where I was treating the family as a patient as well. And we ended up having to stop. He ultimately passed away. But the hug I got from the patient's daughter after that, it was a bad outcome, but yet she was so appreciative that we did everything we could. And that just doesn't, to have that bad outcome and still have somebody thank you in that manner. And the son was great too. He's like, I can't believe you guys did all this, and thank you so much. And we stayed with the patient till the funeral home came and made sure that he was taken care of, and we let the family see him and say goodbye and all this other stuff. And that just tugs at your heart, and that's what keeps me going. To even have bad things like that happen. And I had I had actually this past weekend, I had somebody that was killed on the freeway. He had gotten out of his car and got hit by another car. And, there was nothing we could do, but the wife was there. And I ended up spending, of course, the troopers were all busy doing their accident investigation. And I saw this wife was just there crying and screaming and trying to talk to her family member. They were up in Hale, Michigan, so they're over an hour away. And so I was like, man, why don't you just come to my truck? And I was sitting in front of the echo unit, and we talked, and I found out, their daughter was getting married next week. Their son was in the Air Force, and he's in the Middle East, and suddenly this woman is the only person of her life is gone, and just to spend that hour with her and stay by her side until her family got down there, that's just powerful,
Yeah.
That's what this is about, it's about helping people.
Right.
And it's not about IVs or intubations or defibrillations and all that, it's not a TV show, it's about people.
Yeah.
And as much as it bothered me, because I was like, well, I can't imagine, here's his daughter, well, they'll be getting married this weekend,
Right.
and they're doing a funeral.
Right.
Terrible.
And didn't that, I knew that call happened. Wasn't he trying to help somebody else? Isn't that how that went down?
No, he I don't know how much I should get into it. They had some car trouble, and what they were towing had come disconnected. So he was trying to go back to the dune buggy that disconnected from his vehicle. So
Okay.
So it wasn't in the way. He didn't want anybody else to get in an accident. So he was trying to get that clear, and he just got hit. Somebody wasn't, it wasn't the guy driving. It wasn't really his fault, And I felt bad for that guy too. I'm like, man,
Right.
Yeah.
How do you deal with that?
Right.
But
it's hard. We kind of go on autopilot when we're on the highway, because we just kind of assume nothing's supposed to be there. And unless we see lights, you don't do anything different unless you see lights, and it's so easy to be looking away or talking to a kid in the back or something,
That section of freeway, it seems like from Vienna Road up through Bridgeport there's always trailers coming off. I don't know what. It's like the dang Bermuda Triangle of trailers.
Yeah.
Something is always, always. Since at MMR, we responded 3 times to people whose trailer, they were fine. It wasn't even really an MVA, but their trailer or their boat came off the trailer. I don't know what happens.
I don't
know. There was one night going underneath, I think the Miller Road, underpass right there in Flint. There was a 6x6 piece of wood or something that must have come off somebody, and it was sitting right there in the middle of the lane. Somebody would have and we were paying attention, but right there in that spot, it wasn't a spot where you could pull over and grab it out of the road or whatever. And so I remember just kind of shooting up a prayer, dear God, I hope somebody calls and gets that moved from the highway soon, because it's just you just have to pay attention. It's so hard.
Yeah.
So it's so much more than just course of treatment, and it's such a bigger picture, and it's that is that's kind of what I like to impart on people, is this is a bigger deal than my partner now. He'll test soon for medic, and he understands rather quickly from just mentoring him that IV, that's really insignificant.
Yeah.
You can do an IV, that's cool. But how well did you take care or manage the whole thing? The family, the patient, today I was going to say, we met this lady and her daughter was there, and her daughter was like, well, we got to Hurley and we were pacing back and forth in the waiting room, and you guys were going lights and sirens, and we got there in 8 minutes, and up front, they were like, well, you aren't here yet. And I was like, oh, see. So then I was able to be like, this is what you don't know. So we were there in 3 minutes, but they're taking care of your mom, and the girls up front, they don't know that this is even going on. So they're telling you, I don't know, we haven't checked her in, so she's not here. Right. Which is not really the case.
Yeah.
You know, and it was cool that the whole system kind of came together on this case, because also there was quite a bit, the lady bit her tongue, so we had to suction her, so there was quite a bit of blood on her mouth. Okay. And so the daughter tells me today, so I go in this room, and there she is with all this blood on her shirt and her mouth, and I was like, what in the hell did these guys do to my mom in that ambulance? But then one of the physicians was in there, and they were like, or actually one of the nurses was like, no, this is what happened, and this is why looks like this, and this is what they would have been doing. Yeah. But everybody was on the team, so it was pretty cool. Yeah. I don't know. Well, that's a good place to land the plane, but thanks again for coming on. This is a big deal.
A lot about mental health.
No, we didn't. We'll have you back on, and we'll get directly into that. But I think this is good. It's good for the staff. It's good for my coworkers who listen down here in Genesee. It'll be good for them to hear from you. You know what I mean? Yeah. And to hear from you as not so much assistant vice president, but as Eric. You know what I mean? And to understand you've been at this a while, and you've seen the same things, and you've been through the same things. You know, because I think a lot of times the employee forgets that. You know, they forget that in Genesee, Steve's got a job to do, Jake's got a job to do. They aren't needling us for the sake of it. There's this kind of symphony of this mission that we have to do, and you guys are all kind of working to get us out there doing our thing.
Yeah, and it's a hard thing, Jim, is it, I understood a lot of the background stuff before I started back here, because this is my second round at MMR. But I had a lot of background knowledge of the things that need to happen, but I've gotten a new respect for all the things that have to occur just to make the place function. And we count on the people on the road to do as much as they can right, because we have to be able to get through accreditation. We have to be able to make sure the bills are paid and all this other stuff. But I have a new respect for management, and not that I'm not tooting the horn of management, but I appreciate that the people in the field understand what we have to do, and we're going to do the best that we can to understand what they have to do and try to help them out.
Yeah.
Because we all want to do the same thing. This is about patient care. This isn't about business. This isn't about profitability. I hate that word. I can't stand profitability. I say sustainability always. We're a nonprofit. We're not here to make money. We're here just to do a job, and our job is to take care of people. And we can't forget that not only are the patients people, but our staff are people, the management are people. Everybody, it's all about people, and we've got to treat people like people.
Right.
It's good.
It's a cool industry to be in, man. Because when you look at it like that, you guys are doing all your thing, and at the same while making sure all this thing works together. You're taking me and my partner and trusting us with a couple $100,000 worth of stuff just to go out and do our thing for 12 hours and do it correctly. That's all I have to worry about.
$300,000 worth of stuff. I found that out not too long ago.
Ooh.
Wow, I've been underestimating it.
That's what a new ambulance costs now. $300 fully equipped.
Wow.
But you're right though, Jim. I mean, if you think about it, and my son's in paramedic school right now, and
that's awesome.
I love it.
Think about a 23-year-old who has in charge of somebody's life and driving around in a $300,000 ambulance, giving medications, making decisions on their own that, not to be melodramatic, but are sometimes life-altering decisions. Yeah. Can you imagine that kind of responsibility in any other industry?
No.
You know what I mean? Where else do you have that kind of autonomy to make those decisions? That's why, and I don't know how many people that watch your podcast are nurses. I don't want to offend them, but I don't want to be a nurse.
No.
Me
neither. Because they got a job to do too, but...
Yeah, but I can't give up my freedom.
No.
I love having that freedom. I like not having anybody over my shoulder. Man, it's such a cool job. It is a cool job. And you have the power, like I said, with, people in the grocery store seeing it, you have the power to make such an impact on somebody.
Yeah.
When you do it right, man, it's good. It's really good. So, cool. Let's talk about mental health more.
Yeah, we'll get into that. We'll get into that next time. I think I have something lined up soon to talk to Lori about some ideas I had. So maybe we can do that as a Zoom, and so you can be involved in that too.
Yeah, I wouldn't mind. Yeah, because I got my own. I got some stories on mental health for me, and I for a while I've been thinking about it. I'm like, man, I gotta put that out there.
Cool. Okay.
I think a lot of the things that I've experienced, a lot of people probably have experienced but haven't expressed it. And so I'd like to talk about that sometime.
Sure. Well, if you're available a week from today, we can have you back on 2 weeks in a row. I've done that. Right on.
As long as I don't take down your podcast.
No, that's big. Yeah.
Yeah. Cool. Well, let me know.
Absolutely.
Cool.
I'll get with you in the next couple of days and we'll get it set up.
Sounds good.
Sweet.
Well, thanks again. This is a big deal to me. I told one of the night soups, I was like, yeah, man, I got the podcast tonight. Eric's coming on. And she was like, what? For real? She's like, right on.
Oh, really? Was it Laura?
No, Amber Askin.
Oh, Amber. Okay.
Yeah. So she was like, that's outstanding. I was like, I'm seriously blown away by the support that I've gotten just for this little side stuff we're doing.
Oh, that's cool. I like that. It's neat. Good. I hope you get a lot of listeners. How many people actually watch?
It depends. So a lot of times, if I'm honest, I'm really bad about getting guests. So when it's just me and Ashley, it seems like it's lower. But when we have a guest, we do better. We do probably in the first 24 hours, I would say 30, 35, 40, something like that. And then the last episode, my former fire chief passed away. So we had his son and we were kind of talking about his legacy and stuff like that. So that had more hits.
Right.
And then, so what I'm saying is when we have a guest, we seem to do better.
Right.
So
which we don't mind because we both love talking to people. It's great.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, before you ask me on next week, check your numbers.
No, it'll be good. It'll be good. So, yeah. Right, so I'll do our little outro here. So thank you, Freedom Center Church and Kingdom Builders, for your support. Thank you, Eric, for coming on. And thank you to our listeners. And that's it. We'll see you next time.